Philadelphia, get ready to be inspired. If you need help finding the light in the darkness, don't touch that dial. Let's navigate life through the lens of hope with Scotty P. Inspirational speaker Scotty P speaks the importance of mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental health obstacles that hold us back in life. It's not just inspiration, it's Scotty P Inspiration.
So hello everybody, welcome back to season 4 of the Scotty P Inspiration Show today, where as everybody here knows, we like to navigate life through the lens of hope and rediscover the resilience within ourselves. I'm super excited to be here today. We took about a month and a half off. As you know, holidays, family stuff, it's important, but we're back for season 4, ready to go, ready to give you all inspiring content, okay? And I'm so excited to introduce our first guest of the season. This guy's a beast, needs no introduction, but we're still gonna give him one anyways in a minute or two. But before we get to that, everybody, just so you know, if you wanna watch this show, a couple ways that you can do it. You can go on Spotify, you can go on Apple Podcasts, you can go on any major podcast platform and search the Scotty P Inspiration Show, and you'll be able to listen to us live whenever you want to, whatever you want to do. In addition to that, if you go on YouTube and search Scotty P Inspiration, you can watch the video associated with what you're hearing right now as well. Okay, and last but not least, anybody, to get the best of both worlds, if you go on my website, which is scottypinspo.com, you will be able to get all this content and so much more. All right, everybody, now that we got the administrative stuff out of the way, let's get to it. Let's get into it. Let's introduce our guest for today. So our guest today played in the NFL for 8 years. This man is a 3-time, not 1, not 2, but 3-time Super Bowl champion. He shared the backfield with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, undisputedly. He is a man of honor. He is a man of grit. He is a father. He is a husband. He is number 46. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our guest for the season, our first guest for the season, James Develin. James, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much, Scotty P, for that intro, man. That was beautiful, and thanks for having me, man. I'm glad that I could kick off the 4th season with you.
Awesome, of course. Well, thank you for being with us, James. We'd love to have you here. And for those of you that don't know, James and I met through NSA Philadelphia. So quick plug, if you're looking to start a business as a speaker, or if you want to get a little bit more informed on how to become a speaker, join us at NSA Philadelphia. All right, everybody. So James, you've got an amazing story, man. I mean, we talked a little bit about where you've been and what that's entailed. And being that this show is all about inspiration and hope and overcoming obstacles and moving through challenges, you are literally the perfect person to embody this. So kind of get things started here, I just want you to share a little bit about your story, about how you became this guy that was a 3-time Super Bowl champion, going from somebody that bounced around for a little bit, played in different leagues. So tell us a little bit about your story, man. Enlighten this audience.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in the greater Philadelphia area. I grew up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Was always played football. My dad was a Division III national championship at Widener University with the famous Dr. James Smith.
Hey.
So shout out to him. But yeah, man. So I grew up around the game, and was blessed to be in the area, Philadelphia, when the Eagles were at a prime. I mean, so it was just football was all in my head all the time. Went through high school, was a pretty good player, getting early recruitment from some big time schools. No offers ended up coming because I was kind of like that tweener type, like I wasn't really big enough to play on the defensive line. I wasn't fast enough to play, linebacker at the next level. And that's what I wanted to do, was play linebacker. So ended up trying to leverage my football abilities with my schooling and get the best education I could, knowing that I wasn't going to go to like a big time football school.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go Ivy League, went to Brown, was immediately put on the D-line there, which I didn't quite expect, but it's what the team needed from me. So I just kind of like answered the bell, and then went up there again. It's kind of the same thing, had a very successful, serviceable career, 3-time All-Ivy. But when I wanted to make that next step to the NFL, because that was always my dream,
Mm-hmm.
I was met with a lot of adversity. People didn't believe in me. There was plenty of people that said I was crazy. I was actually just looking last night at, some of my teammates made a one of my teammates made a comment while I was in my senior year, spring. Everybody was going on spring break, and I was staying behind because I wanted to train, right?
Mm.
He made this comment like, better pray, and I was like, I never even saw it until now. And I'm like, I'm going to make him eat his words because I'm going to see him next Thursday, actually. So, yeah, but no, so I ended up kind of scrounging together an agent through a family connection. Like, no one really gave me much of a chance, right? And at that time, coming out of Brown, there was a couple other prospects. My senior year, we had a good team, and those guys either got drafted or signed a free agent deal right out of school. And I ended up as a tryout guy for the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
Went to community camp. I was playing 3-4 outside linebacker, completely just a fish out of water. And I didn't even make it to the third day. It was a 3-day tryout. They let me go after the second day. They're like, no, you're not good enough. So I ended up moving back with my parents, and everyone's like, man, when are you going to try to use this mechanical engineering degree that you just earned from Brown? And I said, you know what? I just had this calling inside me. I got to stay true to myself. I don't want to fall into the traps of just kind of going through what society wants me to do. I got to do something to fulfill what's in my heart. And so I just did a couple things that people would probably frown at, and they did frown at that time. As I followed a Facebook message for a tryout down in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma City Yard Dogs, which was an AFL 2 team, so the second tier of arena football.
Yeah.
And man, it was an experience. I ended up making the team. They didn't expect me. I guess they do this all the time. They'll invite guys to try out, and they just want like bodies to practice against.
Sure.
So I ended up kind of impressing somebody, and they wanted to sign me. So I spent 5 weeks down there, lived in an apartment with boarded up windows. It's getting paid in Taco Bell meal tickets.
Oh yeah, that's the good stuff.
It was an experience, man. Yeah, I got my pads out of this guy's trunk. It was a whole, thing. I spent my 22nd birthday by myself in a Mexican restaurant and going to a movie by myself. But, and then I ended up coming back home, moved back in with my parents, still no prospects. And then finally I kind of got my break. I was in Seattle City with some buddies, and I got a text, and it was Saturday. And he said, hey, you have a flight to Orlando to try out for the UFL.
Okay.
It's a tryout as a fullback, and I had never played fullback, but he's like, just go down there, do what they tell you to do. Don't say anything alternate, and see what happens. So I went down there, made the team, ended up earning the starting fullback spot 2 weeks into the season.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I was a professional fullback, and enough NFL teams had seen my tape that I finally got my shot on the after that season ended, on the Bengals practice squad, and then kind of earned my keep there for a year and a half. I went up to New England, and the rest is history, man. So it was a lot of just like kind of trying to get my foot in the door, get my ego checked, and like constantly just like going with the flow. But there was one thing that kind of just kept going, and is what I touched on before, was I needed to listen to like what was in my heart, and that was football. And I kept saying, like, if I don't try now, like, you're only young once, right? So I need to try to play football at a professional level, because if I don't, I'll always regret it. And I feel like the pain of going after something and coming up short is way less than the pain of never having tried. So I just always had that in my heart, and I just knew I needed to keep chasing it, and things worked out for me, man. So it's a testament to the power of will.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's such an incredible story. I love stories like this, underdog stories. I recently watched the story of Kurt Warner, who also was, he was in the Arena Football League, and it's kind of similar to yours. And it just is so interesting to me that, coming out of college, a really good player, And just to see that, to make that next level leap, it is such a big gap because so many people think, oh, you go from college, NFL, like what's the big difference? It
Yeah.
is huge, right?
Hmm.
I read somewhere that I think it's, of Division I athletes, less than 1%, I believe, go pro,
Hmm.
something like
Yeah.
that. So my question to you is really this. So when you're, down in Oklahoma City, you're trying to follow this calling, everyone's telling you, what are you doing? You got an Ivy League education, just hang it up, man.
Hmm.
So you said what kept you going was that go calling on the inside. But when you
Hmm.
had those nights where you were alone and you were by yourself and you really had those intrusive thoughts thinking, man, is this worth it? How did you fight back against those thoughts? How did you fight back against your own self-doubt that said, maybe I should just stop? So like, what did you do to work through that when those thoughts came?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question, man. And there was a lot of introspective days and nights when I was kind of on that journey where I felt like I was alone in the belief that I could make this dream a reality, And so I think and football does this to you. Anyone that played, it kind of you 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 make yourself so present, and what's in the past is in the past, and you have to be able to control your the moment you're in so that you can control your future, right? And
Right.
so I was in like this compartmentalization mode when I was all along the journey, that it didn't matter like what people were saying, as long as I could see like tangible progress from one day to the next, always getting better. And I, even if it was just like in my training
Mhm.
or, because yeah, like in those 5 weeks in Oklahoma City, did I make much progress towards the NFL? I mean, maybe I had a little bit more tape, and you could say I actually played professional football to a degree.
Mhm.
Um, but I was always just like focused on, all right, I gotta keep taking steps, even if they're super small and no one notices them. As long as I'm making progress, like this is all going to be good and it's all going to work out. I just have to like kind of trust the process. And people
Mhm.
use that term all the time, especially around Philly, right?
The
But
Sixers, yeah.
but I did like kind of lose myself in the process, and I started to love the grind and the monotony of it. And I love the quote, if the man that loves walking will always walk further than the man that loves the destination. And
Mm.
that really started to ring true. And it really does now that I've gotten to that destination. I realize that whole process of getting to the NFL is really what made me the man I am today. It wasn't that I got to the NFL and now, oh, I'm a 3-time Super Bowl champion. Like that's all well and good, but I don't wear my rings around. But what I do wear around is that grit and resiliency and that it took to overcome and to like kind of prove doubters wrong and do all that stuff. That's the stuff that I wear on me. I can't get it off,
Mhm.
So that's really what kind of kept me going. It was just the process and loving it.
Yeah. And I hear not only athletes, but really anybody who's successful talk about you can't cheat the grind. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
love the everyday little steps and all, especially in today's world, all we see is the the
Mm-hmm.
final finished picture, right? Everyone's going on Instagram posting, I got this award, I'm this,
Yeah.
I'm that, right? And that's great, but nobody sees all the work that goes behind the scenes. And you just shared perfectly with our audience here, hey, this was not easy. There was so much that went in this, but by falling in love with that grind, falling in love with incremental progress,
Yeah.
you were able ultimately to get, I'm sure, far beyond what you thought you could have achieved. And like, I want to ask you this, I know anytime there's talking to a professional athlete, you have to believe and have confidence in yourself. But did you ever see yourself being a 3-time Super Bowl champion and accomplishing all that you did?
I mean, looking back, probably not. If you had asked me, in those dark days, would you be a 3-time Super Bowl champion? Would you have, had the career that you had? I would probably say no. I mean, I don't think I was aiming that high. I was just
Mhm.
aiming to get an opportunity to play professional football.
Mhm.
And and I wanted to do that because that was my dream. That's the decision I made when I was, 17, 18 years old. And I thought that I had what it took to get to that level. I mean, I grew up idolizing NFL players. And it was to a degree where I was just like, man, that is what I want to do with my life. And so, yeah, man, I mean, I don't think I never saw it get to this level, but I think maybe part of just like what you had mentioned, loving the process. And even when I got to where I really kind of set out to go, I recognize that there's more to be obtained and there's more success ahead of me if I just keep on going along this process. And it kind of, that kind of became my calling card, man. I was always willing to do that gritty, like in the dark type work. And I love it to this day. Like I love doing things that people are like, why are you doing that? Like, that's crazy. You know, like I ran the Boston Marathon 2 years ago and people are like,
wow.
why are you doing that? But for me, I just like, I ended up loving it. I love like the mental endurance of these types of things, right? These like hard tasks, and playing fullback in the NFL is no easy job, man. You're just running your face into people for a living. And a lot of people don't want to do it, but I was like, oh, I'll do it. You know, if it gets me my dream, let me do that thing, and I'll just build myself in a human battering ram. And so, yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to like this day and age and seeing the finished product. And you always kind of see like everybody boasting their best moments, right? And that comparison to that, it makes us so short-sighted, and you know, that like, oh, why don't I have those things? But you don't see the 7 years it took the CEO to build his brand. You know, it's and I wish that we could stay cognizant of that and have the patience, because that's truly what you need. You just need resiliency, commitment, and patience, man.
I'm eating this up with a spoon and a fork. Give me even a knife too while I'm at it. This is great, bro. This is awesome. And like, you know, one of the things, I was on the news recently and I said this, and I love this quote. I say it all the time. I don't know if I came up with it, but I'm going to say that I did. I always like to say that we need to expand our expectation to include what we didn't plan for, right? Because life is a very, very wide thing, but expectations are very narrow. So if we only stay within our expectations throughout our whole life, we're going to constantly be let down and disappointed, right? But when we expand that expectation to include the natural ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of life, the Oklahoma City times, the UFL times, when we include that in our expectation, all of a sudden it changes our whole outlook and mindset. It changes everything that we do, right? And so for me, just hearing what you talked about there and all of that, it just shows that, hey, you can have your expectation, you're guided by the expectation, but allow yourself to live life and experience everything that comes with it. Because there's something that can be taken away from every single experience that you have. And I think for you, that's an ultimate testimony. And, you know, I think that kind of brings me to a bridge to my next point. I'd love to ask you, so now that you get to your dream, you got it. You're in the NFL. You're playing for the Patriots. You got Tom Brady saying like white 80, 45 raceback said Hutton. And you're like, yeah, I guess I'm supposed to block through the 2-hole here. You know, so you get there. It's all coming true. It's all great for you. Now, how do you deal with staying at that level? How do you deal with all the distractions that come along with being an NFL player, with achieving your dream? How do you stay level-headed? And how do you find that kind of deep down will to keep going? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have to tip my cap to the leader up there at that time, not anymore, but Bill Belichick. He did such a good job at keeping us all humble and keeping us all super focused on what we had to do. And that was, you never felt comfortable. And that can be taken one of two ways, right? I mean, you can say like, you know, you're always looking over your shoulder. You know, it was never like sunshine and rainbows up there, because even if we were 10-0 and we were, you know, on top of the world, there was always a humbling teaching moment that Bill would like harp on. So, I mean, I remember some of our worst team meetings were when we were like unstoppable, when we were just going on tears. And so that constant level of like, oh, you guys think you're good? Like, oh, here, let me pull up these lowlights from last Sunday, you know? it just always kind of lit the fire in us to try to get better and embrace the process. And he was very big in that. And every year it always began in the same thing. He'd say, what we did last year, whether we won the Super Bowl or lost the Super Bowl or lost the AFC Championship, whatever, none of those moments, none of those wins are going to get us anything this year. So like, it is a clean slate. You had to build yourself back up. And every training camp you went in thinking like, I got to earn my job again. And then it was that carried into like every practice is like, I got to go out there and show the team that I'm prepared, because if not, they might replace me or they might bring somebody else in, you know? So it was just that level of like uneasiness, like you always competing, always trying to best yourself. And he really was the guy that kind of lit that fire. And then really, you know, to kind of piggyback on that was Tom did that in his like player role as like a leader, super competitive, always kept us like doing what we needed to do and super focused as well, because you never wanted to let him down. So those two like combined, I mean, it was just a perfect scenario to really breed success and to breed that like never being complacent and never letting your guard down. And those two were definitely, you know, the reason that we had so much success.
Yeah, I mean, I had always obviously been a huge fan of football my whole life. Yeah, I played too, not to the level that you played. But I do remember playing against Pottstown and Pop Warner. I played for the
Yeah.
Lenape Valley Indians.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, man. We
We
probably
had
played
the
each other.
Yeah, we had the gold helmet, and we did a couple things. I think one year we were Bucksmont champs, and I thought it was great, and that was about the pinnacle of my football career.
Nice. I remember playing the Indians. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man. It's good throwback times growing up out, in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
And Pottstown has such a history of football too, man. It's different up there. It
Yeah,
really is. It's
yeah,
pretty
man.
cool that you came from
Yeah,
that
it-
and can show that. But one of the things as we're getting towards the end here, we still got a few more minutes that I would really want you to touch on is like, okay, you learned all these amazing traits throughout your career. For the everyday person listening to this show right now, who maybe is just working a typical job, or maybe is starting to start their own business, or just find their way in their life, what would be your biggest piece of advice for them to make sure that they can follow that dream, block out those voices of what everyone else says, and really just have that resilience be super, free flowing in their life, like what you did?
yeah. That great question again. And this is something that I'm recently now like being dealt, a hand that I'm being dealt, because I retired in 2020. It was like in the middle of COVID. So the whole world was shut down. So I couldn't really like exactly call that my transitional year. But now 2021, we're coming out of COVID, right? Like the world's starting back up. These last 2 years have been hugely transformative for me. And I've been trying to find my way. Like, what am I going to do after football? What's going to be, how I earn a living from 31 till the rest of my life, right? And so one thing that I kind of keep coming back to is just having a sense of being authentic to yourself. And that's something that, I mean, I touched on it in my journey I needed to listen to like what was in my heart. I think that goes for anybody across any line of business and whatever role you may have. If you truly feel like in your heart, you're doing what you're meant to do, and you're out on this journey to get something that you want to achieve, if it's truly your calling and if you can feel it like in your bones, then man, that is the dream. That's the American dream. That's the human dream, is that you just got to go after it, because man, it is such a fulfilling feeling. And I'm getting so hyped up right now. It's such a fulfilling feeling when you chase something that you like can visualize in your mind, and it's like just all you can think about. When you finally get there and you finally get that feeling, man, that is truly being alive in my opinion. I mean, it's like I can still remember like in my body the feeling of running out in front of 80,000 fans and and making these blocks and doing all, because that was like what, in my opinion, was my calling in life, was to just be an NFL player and live those moments. And man, it's just so fulfilling. So whatever your line of work is, and whatever, if it's true to you, if you're being your true self in that role, then man, just enjoy it. And I hope it gives you fulfillment like I had.
Man, I'm ready to get down in a 3-point stance, get 10 cleats, 10 toes on the ground, and just run into the next person I see. This guy, let's go. James Develin out here just dishing nuggets for us all to take up. Everybody, there's nuggets in the air right now. They're gold. Grab them and hold on to them. This dude's dishing out knowledge. Great, man. It's awesome. Oh, good stuff. That is fantastic. Everything that you just said is everything that I'm trying to embody, that I want others to embody as well with this show and with my career too. So we've got a few minutes left here. I want to kind of really leave the people with this. So for you, James, what's next for you? What are you currently pursuing? What are you trying to make your next passion?
Sure, man. Yeah. So when I first retired, I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. I wanted to kind of shift gears from athlete to business. I went to school for mechanical engineering, but I didn't want to really get back into that world. At that point, I was 10 years out of it. And I remember finding some old notebooks of like the math I used to do. And I said, no, that's not for me anymore. So I wanted to get back into business, but I really had to learn. Like I didn't have any sort of like business schooling. So I ended up purchasing a business down here in Brigantine, New Jersey. It's a smoothie shop called Soulberry. I now have 2 locations. I opened one last summer in Ocean City. Wow. And so, yeah, I'm learning a lot through just kind of being in uncharted territory for me. And that's been awesome. Now that's a seasonal business. And so now I'm finding that when it gets to be the winter, I'm like getting a little idle hand syndrome, right? So like you had alluded to in your intro, we met at an NSA event. And so now I'm getting into motivational professional speaking. I've yet to really kind of take the dive and make the leap and say, hey, I'm James Develin, I'm a professional speaker, but I'm doing a lot of like the nitty gritty work right now. I'm kind of in training camp. I'm working. I have two events coming up that I'm doing my due diligence for and writing out speeches and constantly going through them. So I'm kind of taking the approach that I took in the game of football and trying to apply it to this new business. And it is very, very similar in the reward that I get from working and trying to get better as a speaker that I did in the game of football. So it's something that I recognize. Dr. James, who I alluded to earlier, invited me to one of his boot camps. We have our, connection through my father. And it was a hugely, eye-opening experience. He got me up on stage. I've done some things, but never formally, as far as like speaking engagements. And he got me up on stage and man, I could feel it. I could feel that excitement and nervousness and all these things, man. And I was like, you know what? This is something like I haven't felt since, putting the strap and the pads on and getting out there. So why don't I follow this and follow those feelings? Because that's like I said earlier, playing football is when I truly felt alive, right? Right. And then I felt those same types of feelings up in his boot camp, speaking to the 10 people in a room. So if I can do that and now expand it to even more people and try to get my message out there and use the game of football in a different way to inspire or change someone's perspective about life, like, man, sign me up. So that's what I'm leaning into right now. And so it's been a lot of again, uncharted territory. Sure. I never like to really kind of put myself in this light, like, oh, hey, I'm a 3-time Super Bowl champion. I like to just kind of be me. And so I'm finding my authentic voice in this new realm, in this new business. And so, yeah, man, like I said, I haven't fully made the step like, hey, I'm James Develin, the motivational speaker, but that's something that I'd like to see happen in the next few months.
And absolutely everybody listening to this, you're going to be hearing from James Develin soon enough. And I'm going to be promoting his stuff because I'm probably going to be going and being like, yo, this is what's up, man.
I got a lot to learn from you, man. I really admire your intentionality and your energy, man. It's something I picked up on when we sat next to each other at that NSA event. Without knowing you, I could just feel it. You know, like you have a very great way about you, and you know, your ability to connect with people, I just really admire, man. So I got a lot to learn from you, and I should be coming to your events.
Oh man, hey, I appreciate that so much. That really means the world, bro. It really does. And this has been an amazing conversation, like not just for us, but I just know that somebody's going to be helped by this because as you know, man, there are people struggling out there in this world right now trying to find their way. And hearing somebody that's had the success that you've had, but also seeing that you're kind of starting over again too, can be so encouraging to somebody. So we've got just about, a minute or so left here. One last thing that you can leave for the listeners. What do you got for us, James Develin?
Oh man, so it put me on the spot a little bit, but I think, like you alluded to, you never truly know where someone is, and so if you could just be kind and just give people time. You know, time is our greatest asset, and I think we really just have to, like, the life that we live in society these days, everything happens so fast. And like we alluded to earlier in our conversation, we always see so much of, like, people's highlight film, but we have to realize, like, it's not always highlights. There's a lot of lowlights in everyone's story. There's a lot of those things, and you never know when someone's going through those lowlights of life. And so we could just give them the time, open up your ears and listen, take a step back from the pedestal that we put ourselves on, and just be able to listen, hear people, and give them the time that they need. Like, man, we're all going to just be better for it. We're all going to have a better time in our lives. We're going to connect more. And that's something I think we need to do, man, is we need to just be real with people, be vulnerable, be authentic. Something we kind of keep coming back to, man, is I just think we gotta stop putting all on a front for social media, and we gotta just be face to face, like you and me right now, and just tell it like it is, and see who can be helped, and man, I think that's the way we got to get back to in this world.
Oh man, perfect stuff, and right on time. We got 1 minute left, and James, me and you, actually, I'm gonna send you an email after so we can talk a little bit more. But to end on this thing here, everybody. This is season 4, episode 1 with James Develin here. I hope you all were listening, and I hope you all took something from this, because this man had a lot of wisdom to dish out. So everybody, this episode is going to be tuning in soon on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. Check it out. It's going to be great. Thank you all. We're going to have another great season. I can't wait for all that we're going to have to talk about. So everybody, thank you so much. James, thank you for being here. We will see you all later. Everybody, have a great rest of your day.